So with the criticism of some of the people within the Democratic Party on the left of FDR is seen as not aggressive enough, he is going to, in 1935, right before his second term, is going to ramp up what he calls the Second New Deal, or his second 100 days. And there will be some other critics of this as well. From here, the WPA will be created as a way to kind of create non-skill building jobs to try to get more and more people back to work. Again, creating roads or creating all sorts of things that will increase infrastructure. As far as artists and professions and things like that, again, that are not really skilled in laborious jobs or music and so forth. Again, trying to get people back to work. And from this, let me get through here. So from this also Social Security is going to be created for the first time. And again, I mentioned this earlier as a way to provide pensions for people that were old enough so they could retire, to get them out of the factory job, the factory culture and so forth. It was really kind of seen as the first welfare program. And again, it is a way to take from the working and give to the non-working. And this is still something that's in place today. And it does as a way to, when you work, you are taxed, there's a Social Security tax, and that money is then being given to grandma who is able to retire. One of the other parts of the New Deal is called the Wagner Act, and this is going to be a way to kind of protect workers' rights to strike. Again, with FDR being more the progressive side, like Wilson and Roosevelt, he will side with workers when it comes to labor negotiations and regulating big businesses. And during the Wagner Act, it will lead to a union membership increase. We can see that even throughout the course of the 1940s and 50s. It will skyrocket into the 16 millions or so. Million Americans will join labor unions, which is a lot more than it was. So in 1936, FDR will be overwhelmingly elected to a second term. We can see this again even more so than that of when the Republicans ran Herbert Hoover for a second term. He will win all but 8 electoral votes. And from this, he's going to try to increase, again, to halt the criticism that he wasn't doing enough or being aggressive enough. He will try to increase that even more. And even though it was seen as a way to reduce unemployment, again, the New Deal or even the Second New Deal does not do so, and unemployment will actually increase after the Second New Deal here in the 1930s. And from a result of the New Deal not stimulating the economy, they're again going to have more programs that will be put in place to try to stimulate the economy, try to get Americans back to work, and try to get to what the American economy was during the 1920s, and again, get out of this Great Depression. There's going to be more programs that are going to be struck down. We're going to see a huge battle that FDR had between the Supreme Court and also the president of the executive branch. And the Supreme Court finds that the AAA and the NRA are unconstitutional, that these programs are not granted by the Constitution. So FDR threatens to what he calls packing the Supreme Court and increase, and so a way he can appoint all these justices who will do what he asks. And this actually comes back and looks very negative on him, that he's just looking for people, and he will be criticized as being a dictator for trying to really kind of revise the Supreme Court or trying to overstep his constitutional authority, and it is seen as kind of a failure from that. So again, we're going to try to take a look here, and we'll discuss this in class then as well, as how effective really was this New Deal as far as relieving, recovering, and reforming and moving forward. And some of these policies like the CCC, WPA, and so forth were used to try to get people back to work. Did it actually end up stopping unemployment or getting back to rates that we had seen prior to the Great Depression? No. So again, was it really successful? Is what we're going to have to try to figure out. Were regulations put in place like the FDIC, like Social Security, like the Wagner Act to try to protect workers moving forward and try to recover from that? So again, the New Deal does not lead to a real recovery in the American economy, and it's not until World War II that we really see an end of the Great Depression. That we still have 10 million people who are unemployed, that income inequality was not really achieved in the same way that Huey Long really kind of strived for it to be, or that FDR wanted it to be. FDR will, however, bring through his leadership and his fireside chats and some of his programs that are put in place, he will bring a huge coalition to the Democratic Party, and a lot of these groups that the Republican Party had typically controlled are now going to switch over to become Democrats. So African Americans being one of them, immigrants as well, and poor lower income voters are going to be more towards the Democrat Party. And those coalitions, some have changed, some have not, are still kind of put in place today. And a lot of that has to do with the shift that FDR created in the political spectrum moving forward during the 1930s into the 1940s. Again, the role of government is going to change. We've seen this time and time again that during the Gilded Age it was seen as a laissez-faire policy, and that leads to the progressive era, where the Populist Party kind of influences these progressive presidents to take more of a fundamental role in the way the economy is shaped. And then through the progressive era, it leads to this return to normalcy in the 1920s and kind of a reverberation back to laissez-faire policies during the Roaring Twenties. And then again, now we see during the Great Depression more of a clamoring for government intervention under the Democrat wing of the party. So we can see how the constant shift of ideas have changed back and forth and continue to go back and forth today. That still has not changed. One of the other lasting impacts that FDR will have as far as what is the role of government. We're creating welfare programs with the Social Security Act being the same, and then eventually get to Medicare and Medicaid and so forth for providing welfare for people who cannot provide for themselves, and by using deficit spending and kind of being okay with increasing debt and increasing the deficits and so forth in order to create these welfare programs. And that's going to be a new trend, and we're going to go through many periods of high rates of debt versus high rates of surplus, where the United States is not. And obviously today we know that it's a huge issue with that as far as what the debt looks like. And we can see that here, where over the course and all the way up, this graph goes up until 2012, where the debt has basically gone to, where we're up over 16. That number now is over $21 trillion. So we've seen a huge rate as far as what's being added to the debt, and it keeps compounding on itself as deficit spending continues to increase, and the debt limit has been increased multiple times to approve a budget. So really what we want to take away is kind of the role that the New Deal played as far as expanding the role of the federal government, and really in a lot of ways where it never gave back those powers. So again, we've seen this time and time again where what is seen as constitutional, that whole loose versus strict construction idea of how the Constitution should be held. So again, guys, come in with any questions you might have. We're going to discuss this again, kind of the impacts of the New Deal and whether it was effective or not, and we'll pick up with our discussions in class next time. But other than that, I will see you then